Edit: she married the ruthless Wolf King to save her brother, but he was hiding a dangerous secret. What secret was the Wolf King hiding from his new bride? And how far would she go after sacrificing her freedom to save her brother? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another emotional Alpha King and werewolf romance story. Thank you for spending your time with us and for continuing to support the channel. Your encouragement helps us bring you more unforgettable stories of love, sacrifice, danger, and destiny. Tell us in the comments. Would you marry someone feared by everyone if it were the only way to save someone you loved? Now, settle in, open your heart, and let us begin tonight's story. Sign before the third bell, or your brother will not live to hear the fourth. Emma Collins stood beneath the wooden gallows with a marriage contract trembling in her hands. Snow fell across the execution square, collecting on the shoulders of soldiers and townspeople gathered behind the iron barriers. Above them, the fortress of Frosthaven rose from the mountain like a beast carved from black stone. Jacob knelt on the platform. A rope circled her younger brother's neck. His face was bruised, his brown hair stiff with frozen blood, but when he found Emma in the crowd, he tried to smile. "Don't do it," he called. A guard struck him across the mouth. Emma moved forward, but Richard Hale blocked her path. The royal chancellor wore a dark green cloak fastened with a silver wolf. He was thin, clean-shaven, and completely untouched by the cold. He placed a quill beside the contract. "One signature," Richard said. "You marry King Nathaniel Blackwood. Your family surrenders control of the southern river crossing, and your brother receives the king's mercy." Jacob stole nothing. The royal ledgers disagree. The ledgers were forged. Richard's expression did not change. The first bell rang from the fortress tower. Its sound rolled over the square. Jacob flinched as the executioner tightened the rope. Emma looked down at the parchment. The letters were written in heavy black ink, except for one line near the bottom, added in red. "Jacob Collins shall remain in royal custody until the bride completes 30 days of faithful service." Her gaze moved to the seal beneath it. The royal wolf had been pressed crookedly into the wax. Emma had spent years checking contracts, grain accounts, and tax orders for her father. She knew official seals. A king's mark was never crooked. "Did Nathaniel write this condition?" she asked. Richard's eyes cooled. "You are not in a position to question the Wolf King." The second bell rang. The executioner placed one hand on the wooden lever. Emma looked at Jacob. He had been the only person who stayed beside her after their mother died. He had carried water when fever nearly killed her. He had sold his winter coat to buy the medicine she needed. Now his life had been reduced to the time between two bells. Emma pressed the quill into the ink. "Please," Jacob said. "I would rather die than see you sold to him." Her hand stopped. Richard leaned closer. "The stories are true, Lady Emma. Nathaniel Blackwood is ruthless. He breaks rebels with his hands and chains himself beneath the castle during the full moon. But monsters can still honor contracts." Emma stared at him. "Chains himself." For the first time, Richard's calm expression shifted. Only slightly, but she saw it. A secret. Before she could ask again, the third bell began to move. Emma signed. The executioner pulled the lever. The platform beneath Jacob's knees dropped open. Emma screamed. At the same instant, a black-gloved hand caught the rope above Jacob's head. A towering man stood on the scaffold. He wore scarred black armor and a heavy wolf fur cloak. Snow clung to his dark hair. His broad shoulders strained as he held Jacob's entire weight with one arm. Nathaniel Blackwood raised his amber eyes toward Richard. The Wolf King's handsome face held no mercy, only fury. "Who," he asked, "gave you permission to hang my wife's brother?" "I asked you a question, Richard." Nathaniel Blackwood's voice was quiet, but the execution square seemed to shrink around it. He still held Jacob's weight with one arm. The rope cut deeply into the young man's throat while his boots kicked above the open trapdoor. Richard Hale stepped toward the scaffold. "My king." The prisoner was convicted of stealing royal grain. Nathaniel's amber eyes moved to the crooked seal on Emma's contract. "I did not authorize an execution. The marriage agreement required persuasion." A low growl rolled from Nathaniel's chest. Emma had heard stories about that sound. They said the Wolf King could silence an army without raising his voice. Standing beneath the gallows, she finally understood why. Nathaniel tore the rope apart with his bare hand. Jacob crashed onto the platform, coughing violently. Emma rushed up the steps and dropped beside him, pressing trembling fingers against the raw skin around his neck. "He needs a healer," she said. Nathaniel looked at the nearest guards. "Remove his chains. Take him to the royal infirmary." Richard's face tightened. "The contract states that he remains in custody for 30 days. Nathaniel descended from the scaffold. He was even larger at close range, broad-shouldered and towering above everyone around him. A pale scar crossed his jaw, sharpening a face that was already hard and dangerously handsome. He stopped before Richard. "You altered a royal contract. I protected the alliance. You nearly murdered an innocent man to secure it." "Innocent?" Richard glanced toward Jacob. "The ledgers carry his signature." Emma stood. "They are forged." Nathaniel turned toward her. His gaze was direct, assessing, and far less cruel than she had expected. "You can prove that." "I can prove the seal on this contract is false." She held up the parchment. For one moment, Nathaniel looked almost surprised. Then his eyes settled on her signature. The anger in his face changed into something heavier. "You believed I demanded this." "You are the Wolf King," Emma said. "What else was I supposed to believe?" A muscle tightened in his jaw. Nathaniel removed his black glove and reached for the contract. As his fingers brushed the silver wolf clasp fastening Richard's cloak, he flinched. It happened quickly. A sharp breath. A flicker of pain. The faint smell of burned skin. Nathaniel pulled his hand back before anyone else appeared to notice. Emma noticed. A red mark spread across his wrist beneath the edge of his armor. "Silver." Richard lowered his eyes, but not before Emma saw satisfaction flash across his face. Nathaniel turned to the gathered soldiers. "Jacob Collins remains under royal protection, not imprisonment. No one questions him without my permission." Then he faced Emma. "The contract has been signed before witnesses. If I break it publicly today, Richard's allies will claim your brother escaped lawful judgment. They will hunt him before sunset. So I am still required to marry you." His expression hardened with something close to shame. "For now." Snow gathered in Emma's hair. "And what happens when we reach Frosthaven? You will have private chambers. No servant, soldier, or king will enter without your consent." Richard gave a quiet laugh. A strange promise for a wedding night. Nathaniel looked at him. The laughter died. Hours later, Emma rode beside the Wolf King's carriage as the execution square disappeared behind them. Jacob followed under the care of a royal healer. Nathaniel kept his distance, until one of the horses slipped on the frozen road. A young soldier fell, cutting his palm on a broken stone. The scent of blood entered the air. Nathaniel stopped breathing. His amber eyes turned black. Bones cracked beneath his skin as his hands clenched around the reins. "Move away from me," he said through sharpening teeth. Emma stared at the ruthless king she had just married. For the first time, he looked afraid. Not of her, of what he was about to become. "If I call your name tonight, do not come to me." Nathaniel spoke without looking at Emma. The wounded soldier had been taken to the rear carriage, his hand wrapped tightly enough to hide the scent of blood. Nathaniel remained on horseback for the rest of the journey, riding far ahead of everyone else. By dusk, Frosthaven Castle rose above the frozen valley. Black towers pierced the storm clouds. Iron braziers burned along the walls, their flames bending beneath the northern wind. Servants gathered in the courtyard when the royal procession entered, but no one cheered for the new bride. They watched Nathaniel instead. Fear followed him like a second cloak. The wedding took place before the great hearth. A priest spoke the ancient vows while Emma stood beside a man whose hands remained clenched at his sides. Nathaniel promised protection, land, and royal standing. He did not promise love. When the priest instructed him to kiss his bride, Nathaniel looked at Emma. "May I?" The question surprised her more than cruelty would have. Emma gave a small nod. His lips touched her forehead, brief and careful. The court murmured, disappointed by the absence of possession. Richard Hale watched from the edge of the hall. His silver clasp gleamed against his green cloak. After the ceremony, Nathaniel escorted Emma through the eastern wing. Her chamber was warm, lined with dark wood and heavy blue curtains. A fire burned beside a bed large enough for 2 people. Nathaniel stopped at the doorway. "This room belongs to you," he said. "The key will remain in your hand." Emma studied him. "And where will you sleep?" "Elsewhere." "Behind the forbidden doors?" His amber eyes sharpened. "You heard the stories. I heard you tell me not to follow if you called my name." For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. The northern wing is locked for a reason. What reason? Nathaniel looked toward the corridor. The moon had begun to rise beyond the narrow windows. His breathing changed. Because some doors protect the people outside them. He stepped back before Emma could ask anything more. 3 guards waited near a stone staircase at the end of the corridor. Nathaniel descended without his cloak or sword. Emma followed at a distance. Below the castle, the air smelled of damp rock, iron, and something bitter. 3 silver locks sealed a thick oak door. Nathaniel entered the chamber beyond it. Chains scraped across the floor. The guards closed the door and fastened each lock. Nathaniel's voice came through the wood. No matter what you hear, do not open this door. A guard swallowed. Yes, my king, even if I command you. The first growl shook dust from the ceiling. Emma stood in the shadows, unable to move. Then Nathaniel shouted her name. Not with anger, with terror. Emma, run. Something massive struck the other side of the door. The silver locks rattled. One guard reached for his weapon while another began praying. Emma noticed a gray streak across the stones near her feet. Medicine. It carried the same bitter scent that had clung to Nathaniel's breath on the road. Another impact shook the corridor. Then silence. At dawn, Emma returned alone. The guards had gone. Nathaniel's blood covered the outside of the uppermost lock. Someone had opened the door during the night. The monster beneath the castle was not the only thing being fed in secret. Emma stared at the blood smeared across the silver lock. The mark was shaped like a handprint. Nathaniel had reached through the narrow opening after someone released the upper bolt, then fought to force the door closed again. A guard approached from the stairwell. His face went pale when he saw her. My lady, you should not be here. Who opened the door? No one. Emma pointed to the broken seal. The guard lowered his eyes. The king ordered us never to speak of what happens below. Then tell me what happened above. He said nothing. Behind the oak door, chains moved softly. Nathaniel was alive. Emma stepped closer. My king. Silence answered. Then his exhausted voice came through the wood. Leave. You are bleeding. I said leave. The command carried anger, but beneath it she heard shame. Emma looked at the gray medicine dried along the stones. Someone had entered, given him another dose, and left before dawn. She did not argue. Not yet. When Emma returned to the upper castle, the smell of roasted meat filled the corridor. The royal kitchens overflowed with food. Bakers carried white loaves from brick ovens. Servants arranged smoked venison, apples, and honey cakes for the morning council. Outside the kitchen windows, villagers stood beyond the gates holding empty bowls. A little girl pressed both hands against the iron bars while her mother begged a guard for flour. There are no public rations today, the guard said. Emma turned to the head cook. Why? The woman stiffened. The northern stores are empty. Emma looked at the tables. These are not. The royal household has separate supplies. Open them. The cook's eyes widened. Lady Victoria ordered preparations for tonight's welcome feast. I am the king's wife. You are his contracted bride, a cold voice corrected. Victoria Reed entered wearing crimson velvet and white fox fur. Her golden hair was arranged beneath a jeweled net, untouched by kitchen smoke or winter wind. The council does not permit foreign brides to alter royal provisions, she said. Emma picked up a ration ledger beside the flour bins. Numbers covered every page. 300 sacks delivered to the northern villages. 200 more sent to the mountain guard. All signed by Jacob Collins. Emma's breath stopped. The dates were from 6 weeks earlier. Jacob had broken his right hand during the autumn harvest. Emma had wrapped the bones herself. He could not hold a spoon, much less sign his name. Yet the signature was nearly perfect. Nearly. The final letter curved left instead of right. Forged. Emma closed the ledger. Where are the original delivery seals? Victoria smiled. Somewhere a purchased bride cannot reach. Emma carried the book into the council chamber. Nathaniel sat at the head of the long table, freshly washed and dressed in black. Bandages covered both wrists. His face was pale, but no one mentioned the wounds. Richard stood beside him. Emma placed the ledger before the king. Your villages are starving while someone records food they never received. Richard sighed. The northern roads are dangerous. Supplies disappear. They did not disappear. Emma opened the ledger and pointed to Jacob's name. They were stolen, and my brother was framed to hide it. Nathaniel studied the signature. Richard laughed quietly. A convenient accusation. Jacob's writing hand was broken on every date listed here. The room fell silent. Nathaniel looked toward Richard, then back to Emma. What do you need? 3 days. Access to every royal storehouse, every wagon record, and every seal used this winter. Richard stepped forward. My king, she has no authority. Nathaniel's amber eyes hardened. She does now. A horn sounded outside. A messenger stumbled into the chamber, snow covering his cloak. The village of Pine Hollow has no grain left, he gasped. Children are already dying. Emma closed her hand around the forged ledger. 3 days had just become one. Numbers do not starve children, Emma said. People who hide behind them do. Before sunrise, every wagon in Frosthaven's eastern yard had been pulled into a single line. Drivers cursed beneath their breath while soldiers opened storehouses and dragged scales into the snow. Emma stood beside the first wagon with the forged ledger tucked beneath her arm. Nathaniel watched from the courtyard steps. His black cloak concealed the bandages around his wrists, but exhaustion sharpened every line of his face. Richard Hale stood beside him, outwardly calm. The roads to Pine Hollow will freeze by nightfall, Richard said. This inspection wastes time. Then help us finish faster, Emma replied. A few soldiers hid smiles. She ordered the first sack weight. The ledger recorded 80 pounds. The scale showed 43. Emma cut the stitching. Wheat covered the top, but beneath it lay gravel wrapped in coarse cloth. A murmur moved through the yard. Open the rest. By the 10th wagon, they had found 30 false sacks. Nathaniel descended the steps. How many villages received shipments from this yard? 7, Emma said. If the pattern holds, less than half their grain ever arrived. Richard folded his hands. Bandits could have replaced the contents. Without breaking the royal seals. Emma held up a lump of dark red wax. The seal is genuine, but it was pressed after the theft. She placed it beside the crooked mark on her marriage contract. The same flaw appeared in both wolves, one fong shorter than the other. Richard's expression remained still. His pulse did not. Emma heard Nathaniel's low growl. Who controls the duplicate seal? He asked. Richard looked toward the quartermaster. The man immediately stepped back. Before he could speak, smoke rose from the western storehouse. Fire, someone shouted. Flames burst through the roof. Drivers scattered. Soldiers rushed for water, but Emma ran toward the burning building. Nathaniel caught her around the waist. Let me go. The roof is collapsing. The original records are inside. I will not trade your life for paper. Emma twisted toward him. Then help me save both. Nathaniel released her and shouted for wet hides. Together, soldiers covered the doorway while Emma crawled beneath the smoke. Heat clawed at her face. Shelves burned along the walls. Near the rear, a hooded man emptied oil across a stack of ledgers. Emma seized a wooden shovel and struck his wrist. The torch fell. He lunged for her, but Nathaniel crashed through the smoke and drove him against the wall. The attacker bit down on something hidden in his mouth. Nathaniel caught his jaw too late. The man convulsed and went still. Poison, Emma whispered. Nathaniel pulled her outside as the roof collapsed behind them. Only one ledger survived. Its pages were burned at the edges, but the wagon numbers remained visible. Emma followed them to the final card in the yard. Its seals were unbroken. Its driver had vanished. She marked the underside with blue chalk, then ordered the soldiers to remove the top layer of wheat. Beneath it were narrow iron barrels. Nathaniel forced one open. Fine silver powder spilled across the snow. He recoiled as if struck. The skin along his wrist began to burn beneath the bandage. Emma looked from the silver to the gray medicine she had seen outside the locked chamber. The same bitter scent rose from both. Richard took one slow step backward. Emma turned toward him. The stolen grain was never the real shipment. A horn sounded from the northern road. Pine Hollow was calling for help again. Emma closed the barrel. Send the recovered food now, she told Nathaniel. And lock every gate. His blackening eyes remained fixed on Richard. Why? Emma held up the burned ledger. Because whoever is starving your villages is also feeding silver to their king. A starving kingdom can survive one cruel winter, Emma said. It cannot survive a court that profits from the hunger. By midday, the recovered grain was moving north. Wagons rolled through Frosthaven's gates beneath armed escort, carrying enough food to keep Pine Hollow alive for 2 weeks. Emma stood in the council chamber while reports from the other villages covered the long table. 7 false deliveries, 12 missing wagons, 3 hidden storehouses. Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, watching her rearrange the records by route instead of date. Richard Hale's chair remained empty. He left before the gates closed, Owen Walker said. His rooms have been cleared. Nathaniel's jaw hardened. Find him. Emma placed the burned ledger beside a smaller book she had recovered from the quartermaster's office. The grain theft funded something larger. She pointed to repeated payments marked only as royal treatment. Every silver shipment ended at the medical wing. Abigail Moore, the royal healer, went pale. That is impossible. You prepare the king's medicine. I prepare herbs, moonroot, and fever bark. Nothing containing silver. Nathaniel looked at her. Who delivers the final mixture? Abigail hesitated. Richard's personal physician. Silence filled the chamber. A bell rang outside. The first warning for moonrise. Nathaniel's fingers tightened around the arms of his chair. Emma saw the change immediately. His breathing slowed. His pupils widened. A dark vein appeared beneath the skin near his temple. You took the medicine this morning, she said. Nathaniel rose too quickly. The table cracked beneath his hand. Everyone leave. No one moved. His amber eyes turned black. Now. The council emptied. Emma stayed. Nathaniel stared at her from across the table. You heard me. Yes. Then why are you still here? Because if I leave, they will lock you below and give you another dose. A growl vibrated through his chest. You do not understand what happens when the moon rises. I understand that someone wants you to believe the monster is yours. Pain crossed his face. For 1 second, he looked less like a king than a man who had spent years fearing his own blood. The second warning bell rang. Nathaniel turned away. Abigail has the key to the northern chamber. Emma followed him. Below the castle, the guards opened the 3 silver locks. Nathaniel entered the stone cell and fastened the chains around his own wrists. Emma stepped inside before the door closed. His head snapped toward her. Get out. No, Emma. You gave me 3 days to prove the grain was stolen. Give me 1 night to prove you are being poisoned. His breathing became ragged. Bones shifted beneath his skin. You may not survive the hour. Emma lifted the smaller ledger. Then try not to kill the only person who knows where the silver came from. A broken laugh escaped him. You negotiate like a merchant. I married like one. The chains pulled tight as his body convulsed. Abigail set a gray bottle beside the door. Emma seized it before the healer could pour. She smelled bitter almonds. Then she dipped a silver spoon into the liquid. The metal turned black. This is not medicine. Nathaniel's face twisted as the wolf rose beneath it. Leave, he begged. Emma poured the bottle onto the floor. No more doses. The transformation struck him violently. His shoulders widened. Claws tore through his palms. The chains groaned against the wall as he lunged toward her. Emma did not run. She opened the ledger and shouted over his roar. Every attack began after Richard's physician increased your treatment. Nathaniel slammed to his knees. The silver is teaching your wolf to associate pain with blood, moonlight, and fear. His black eyes fixed on her. For one terrible moment, there was nothing human inside them. Then Emma spoke his name. Nathaniel. The chain stopped shaking. His claws dug into the stone. Slowly, painfully, the darkness receded from his eyes. He collapsed at her feet, half-shifted and gasping. Emma knelt beyond the reach of his hands. You are not cursed, she said. Nathaniel looked toward the spilled medicine. Then who has been doing this to me? A door slammed above them. Owen's voice echoed down the stairwell. My king. Richard has taken Jacob from the infirmary. Emma rose. On the wall beside the chains, someone had carved 4 words into the stone. The blood moon ends kings. If Richard took Jacob, then he wants more than revenge, Emma said. He wants us to follow. Nathaniel pushed himself upright against the stone wall. The silver had left his body trembling. Sweat darkened his hair, and blood ran from the places where his claws had torn through his palms. He looked too weak to stand. Yet the moment Owen spoke Jacob's name, the king reached for the chains. Emma caught the iron key before Abigail could move. You cannot fight like this. He has your brother. And Richard knows you will abandon reason to reach him. Nathaniel's black eyes met hers. Would you not? Emma thought of Jacob beneath the gallows, the rope tightening around his throat. Yes, she said. That is why one of us must think. The answer stopped him. Owen descended the stairs, breathing hard. The physician is dead. Richard's men entered through the western infirmary passage. They left this behind. He handed Emma a strip of Jacob's coat. for words had been written across the fabric in red ink. "Bring the king's medicine ledger." Nathaniel looked toward the small book in Emma's hands. "He knows we found it. He knows Jacob saw something," she replied. Abigail unlocked the chains. Nathaniel rose, but his knees nearly failed. Emma moved instinctively, placing one hand beneath his arm. His body went rigid. She felt the restraint in him, the fear that even weakened, he might hurt her. "I am holding you," she said quietly. "You are not holding me." Only then did he allow part of his weight to rest against her. They returned to the council chamber before sunrise. Owen sealed the doors while Abigail spread medical records across the table. Emma compared the king's treatment schedule with the missing silver shipments. The pattern was exact. Every increase in dosage came 3 days before a political execution, a border attack, or a council vote. Richard had not merely been weakening Nathaniel. He had been creating moments of violence, then using them to convince the court that the Wolf King was becoming unstable. "He built your reputation," Emma said. "Every time the poison made you lose control, Richard gave the council another reason to fear you." Nathaniel stared at the pages. "How many people did I hurt?" No one answered. His voice dropped. "How many?" Owen looked away. 7 guards. 2 prisoners. 1 counselor. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Emma saw the guilt enter him like another poison. "Richard caused this," Abigail said. "I carried out the violence." Nathaniel opened his eyes and faced Emma. "If Jacob dies because of me, he will not. You cannot promise that." "No," Emma said, "but I can promise Richard will not decide our next move." She placed the medicine ledger beside the grain records. The same initials appeared on both. R.H. "We give him what he asked for." Owen frowned. "The original ledger?" "A copy." Emma began tearing blank pages from the back of an old tax book. "We change the shipment dates, add a false location, and make Richard believe the remaining silver is hidden beneath the eastern granary." Nathaniel understood first. He will move Jacob there and expose whoever still serves him. For the next hour, Emma recreated the ledger in Richard's preferred format. She copied every number carefully, then added one deliberate error, a wagon route that did not exist. Nathaniel watched her work. "You trust me enough to build this plan together," he said. Emma did not look up. "I trust that you want Jacob alive." "That is not the same thing." "No." The word remained between them. Not trust, not love, an alliance. For now, it was enough. A horn sounded outside the council chamber. Owen opened the window. Below, soldiers gathered in the courtyard as Richard's voice carried from the battlements. Emma Collins poisoned the Wolf King. A gasp spread through the castle. Richard dragged Jacob onto the western wall with a blade against his throat. "And if she does not surrender before moonrise," he shouted, "her brother will die before the entire kingdom." Nathaniel reached for his sword. Emma closed the false ledger. "This time," she said, "we make him believe we are divided. Then let them watch you arrest me." Emma placed the false ledger in Nathaniel's hands. For one brief moment, the Wolf King did not move. Outside, Richard held Jacob against the western battlement while soldiers filled the courtyard below. Fear spread faster than truth. Emma could hear the whispers already. The foreign bride had poisoned the king. The starving villages were her doing. Jacob had stolen the grain. Every lie had been prepared before she entered Frosthaven. Nathaniel looked at her. "If I put you in chains, Richard may order your death before we reach him. If you protect me now, the council will believe his accusation. And you expect me to trust that you have another way out?" Emma met his amber eyes. "No, I expect you to trust that I will find one." The words struck something between them. Nathaniel lifted his sword. When they entered the courtyard, every face turned toward them. Emma walked ahead with her hands unbound. Nathaniel followed in black armor, his expression cold enough to convince even Owen. Richard smiled from the wall. "So the ruthless king finally sees what his bride has done." Nathaniel seized Emma's wrists and locked iron restraints around them. Gasps moved through the soldiers. "I, Nathaniel Blackwood, place Emma Collins under arrest for treason against Frosthaven." Jacob shouted from above. "No, she did nothing." Richard pressed the blade closer to his throat. Nathaniel dragged Emma toward the center of the courtyard. His grip appeared brutal, but his thumb pressed once against her pulse. A warning, or reassurance. Emma could not tell which. Richard descended the stone stairs with Jacob and 6 armed men. "Give me the medicine ledger," he said. Nathaniel threw the false book into the snow between them. Richard did not pick it up himself. One of his soldiers opened it and turned several pages. The Eastern Granary, the man said. Richard's eyes brightened. There. The reaction Emma needed. You hid the remaining silver beneath the Eastern Granary, she said. Richard's gaze snapped toward her. I said nothing of silver. The courtyard fell silent. Emma took one step forward. You told everyone I poisoned the king, yet no one outside the medical wing knew what substance was used. Richard's smile vanished. He recovered quickly. Your brother confessed. Jacob's face twisted with anger. I confessed to nothing. Richard struck him across the back of the head. Nathaniel's wolf surged beneath his skin, but he remained still. Emma looked at Jacob. Tell them what you saw. Jacob's breathing shook. The night before they arrested me, I delivered grain records to the medical store. Richard was there with the royal physician. Richard raised his blade. Owen and his soldiers drew their swords. Jacob continued. They were pouring silver powder into the king's medicine. Richard saw me through the glass. The next morning, guards found stolen grain beneath my bed. Murmurs spread through the courtyard. Richard grabbed Jacob by the collar. Enough. Emma lifted her chained hands. The forged signatures, the duplicate seal, the missing grain, the silver shipments, and the poison medicine all lead to you. Richard laughed, but panic had entered the sound. You have no original ledger. No, Emma said, but you believe the copy. His eyes dropped to the false book. Nathaniel moved. He crossed the distance in a single violent step and tore Jacob from Richard's grasp. Owen's soldiers closed around them. Richard retreated toward the stairs. Then the bells began to ring. Not the hour. An alarm. Abigail appeared at the eastern doors, pale and breathless. My king, the royal medicine stores are burning. Smoke rose beyond the inner wall. Richard smiled again. While every eye turned toward the flames, one of his men drove a dagger into Nathaniel's side. The blade came away coated in silver. Nathaniel staggered. His eyes turned black. Richard backed toward the council hall. The blood moon rises tomorrow, he said. Let us see which of you survives the king's final transformation. Emma caught Nathaniel before he fell. This time, when his claws closed around her arm, he did not recognize her. Nathaniel, if any part of you can still hear me, let go before you become the monster Richard needs you to be. His claws tightened around Emma's arm. Pain flashed through her shoulder as Nathaniel dragged himself upright. The silver-coated wound in his side smoked beneath his torn armor. Black veins spread across his chest, and his face twisted between human agony and the violent shape forcing its way through him. Soldiers backed away. Some raised their swords. Others dropped to their knees and prayed. Richard stood beneath the archway of the council hall, watching with satisfaction. Look at your king, he called. Look at what Emma Collins has unleashed. Emma ignored him. Nathaniel's eyes were entirely black now. His teeth sharpened. His grip could have broken her arm with one movement. She forced herself not to struggle. On the road to Frosthaven, he had lost control at the scent of blood. Beneath the castle, he had fought the poison when she spoke his name. The silver taught his wolf pain. Fear fed it. Emma lowered her voice. You caught Jacob's rope before it killed him. Nathaniel growled. You gave me a locked door and called it mine. His claws pierced the fabric of her sleeve. You asked before you touched me. Something flickered behind the darkness. Richard's expression changed. Kill her, he shouted. One of his soldiers raised a crossbow. Owen struck the weapon aside before the bolt was released. Fighting erupted across the courtyard. Nathaniel jerked toward the noise. Emma caught his face between her hands. Nathaniel Blackwood. His gaze snapped back to hers. You are not the poison. You are not Richard's weapon. You are the man who was afraid of hurting me. His claws loosened. Only slightly. Then his body convulsed. Nathaniel collapsed against her, his weight driving both of them into the snow. Emma pressed one hand over the wound in his side, while Abigail rushed forward with bandages. The blade carried refined silver. The healer said, I need moonroot ash. The medical stores are burning. Then we have nothing strong enough to stop the transformation. Emma looked toward the rising smoke. The medicine wing was not the only place moonroot had been stored. She remembered the ration records. Winter herbs had been delivered to Pine Hollow with the recovered grain. There is moonroot in the northern relief wagons. Owen blocked a sword and shouted over his shoulder. Those wagons left hours ago. Emma looked at the eastern gate. Richard's soldiers were already closing it. He had planned every exit. A horn sounded from the council tower. The members of the royal council appeared on the balcony above the courtyard. Victoria Reed stood among them, pale but composed. Richard raised one bloodstained hand. "The Wolf King has been poisoned by his foreign bride," he declared. "For the protection of Frosthaven, Nathaniel Blackwood is no longer fit to rule." The councillors hesitated. Then one bowed. Another followed. Victoria did not. Richard pointed toward Emma. "Arrest her. Execute Jacob Collins. Chain the king beneath the northern wing until the blood moon decides whether he remains a man." Nathaniel stirred against Emma. His eyes opened, amber fighting through black. "Run," he rasped. Emma shook her head. "I am finished running from contracts written by other people." Owen and 4 loyal guards formed a shield around them, but Richard's soldiers filled the courtyard. They were outnumbered. Jacob stumbled to Emma's side, still weak from captivity. "There is another way out," he whispered. "The old grain tunnel beneath the stables." Emma looked at Nathaniel. If they carried him through the tunnel, Richard would call it proof of guilt. If they stayed, Nathaniel would be chained and poisoned again. Either way, Richard controlled the story. Unless Emma changed the question. She stood slowly and raised her empty hands. "I surrender." Nathaniel's fingers closed weakly around her wrist. "No," Emma looked down at him. "Trust me." The word held everything they had not yet earned, everything they had begun to build. Nathaniel released her. Richard's soldiers seized Emma and Jacob. Silver chains locked around their wrists. Richard crossed the courtyard and stopped before her. "You should have remained a decorative bride." Emma smiled through the pain. "You should have checked which ledgers survived the fire." For the first time, fear entered his eyes. Emma leaned closer. "The original medicine ledger was never in the council chamber." Richard struck her across the face. "Where is it?" Emma tasted blood. She looked toward the council balcony, where Victoria was still watching. Then Emma answered loudly enough for every soldier and noble to hear. "Somewhere your final dose of silver cannot burn." Richard's control cracked. "Take her below." As the guards dragged Emma toward the northern cells, the blood moon rose above Frosthaven. Its red light touched Nathaniel's face. And from somewhere beneath the castle, a wolf began to howl. "By sunrise, Emma Collins will no longer be my wife." Nathaniel's voice thundered through the northern cells. Emma gripped the iron bars. Richard Hale entered first, carrying a lantern. Behind him walked 6 guards and the Wolf King. Silver chains bound Nathaniel's wrists. His black armor had been removed, exposing the poisoned wound beneath his ribs. Dark veins climbed his throat, and the blood moon painted his skin red through the narrow windows. Yet he stood upright. His amber eyes found Emma's. There was nothing warm inside them. Richard smiled. "Your king has finally accepted the truth." Jacob rose from the floor beside her. Emma saved him. Nathaniel did not look at him. "She concealed evidence," he said. "She interfered with royal accounts, released accused prisoners, and brought poison into Frosthaven." Each accusation struck like a blade. Emma knew the charges were lies, but Nathaniel spoke them without hesitation. Richard unlocked the cell, then signed the order. A guard placed a parchment on the wooden table outside the bars. Nathaniel took the quill. Emma stared at him. Only hours earlier, he had released her wrist when she asked him to trust her. Now he signed beneath a sentence declaring their marriage dissolved and her life forfeit at dawn. His hand did not shake. Jacob lunged toward the bars. "You coward!" Nathaniel folded the order. Richard's satisfaction filled the corridor. "The council will witness the execution," he said. "Once the foreign bride is dead, Frosthaven can begin healing." He turned toward the guards. "Move Jacob to the western tower. Leave Emma here." The guards dragged Jacob away while he shouted her name. Emma did not answer. She kept her eyes on Nathaniel. "Was any of it real?" she asked. The question stopped him. Richard glanced between them. Nathaniel's expression remained cold. No, one word. One clean wound. Emma felt something inside her close. Richard laughed softly and walked toward the stairs. The guards followed, taking the lanterns with them. Nathaniel remained behind. When the final door shut above, darkness swallowed the corridor. Emma stepped away from the bars. "You can leave now." "I cannot." His voice had changed. The cruelty was gone. Nathaniel moved closer and opened his hand. A small iron key lay against his palm. Emma stared at it. "You signed my execution order." "I signed an order naming the eastern courtyard." "What does that change?" Richard moved every loyal soldier to the eastern wall to guard it. Nathaniel pushed the key through the bars. The execution platform is in the western square. Understanding came slowly. You gave Owen an opening. And Victoria has the original medicine ledger. Emma closed her fingers around the key. Nathaniel looked toward the staircase. Richard believes I chose the throne over you. He will stop watching the grain tunnels. You decided this without telling me. If Richard saw trust between us, he would never believe the lie. So you made me believe it. Pain crossed his face. Yes. Emma stepped closer to the bars. That was not protection. That was control wearing a kinder name. Nathaniel lowered his head. I know. The honesty made her angrier. Above them, a horn sounded. Once. Twice. The signal from Owen. The western passage was open. Emma unlocked the cell, but did not step out. What happens when the moon reaches its highest point? Nathaniel's chains tightened as his body convulsed. I lose what remains of myself. Then come with us. No, his eyes darkened. Richard needs me alive until the council crowns him regent. If I disappear, he will seal every gate. Another growl rolled through the corridor. Nathaniel shoved a folded map through the bars. The tunnel leads to Jacob. Take him and leave Frosthaven. Emma looked at the open passage. Freedom waited below. Behind her, Nathaniel dropped to one knee as claws tore through his hands. Go, he begged. Emma unfolded the map. At its center, Richard's final plan had been marked in Nathaniel's blood. At midnight, the northern granaries would burn. Thousands would starve before spring. Emma closed the cell door again. Nathaniel looked up in horror. What are you doing? She locked herself inside with him. Making my own decision. Freedom means nothing if it is only another choice someone makes for you. Emma stood inside the locked cell while Nathaniel fought the transformation. The blood moon climbed higher beyond the narrow window. Red light spilled across the floor, catching on the silver chains around his wrists. His shoulders shook as bones shifted beneath his skin. You should not be here, he said through clenched teeth. You marked the burning granaries on the map. I marked them so you could warn Owen, and then leave you behind. Nathaniel dragged himself farther from her. That was the plan. Your plan. A distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling. The northern granaries had begun to burn. Nathaniel roared as the poison surged through him. Emma pressed herself against the wall, but she did not unlock the door. If Richard's men found Nathaniel alone, they would use the king's transformation as proof that he had become a monster. Footsteps thundered down the passage. Owen appeared with Jacob and 3 loyal guards. Emma. Jacob seized the bars. Opened the door. She pushed the key through to him. The moment the lock released, Owen entered with a length of heavy chain. Together, the guards restrained Nathaniel before he could reach Emma. Moonroot? She asked. Victoria has it, Owen said. She is waiting at the western stable. They carried Nathaniel through the old grain tunnel beneath the castle. Smoke seeped through cracks in the ceiling. Above them, bells rang in every tower while Richard's soldiers rushed toward the false execution site in the eastern courtyard. The tunnel ended behind the western stables. Victoria waited with 5 saddled horses, the original medicine ledger, and a leather pouch of moonroot ash. Abigail mixed the antidote while Nathaniel convulsed against the ground. Within minutes, the darkness began to recede from his eyes. Owen pointed toward the open southern gate. Ride now. Richard has not sealed the road. Emma looked beyond the walls. The white road stretched into the forest. Freedom. No contract. No throne. No king. Jacob caught her hand. We can leave, he said. Both of us. Behind them, flames rose over the northern quarter. If we go, the granaries burn, Emma said. We have spent our whole lives paying for other people's choices. Jacob pulled a folded parchment from inside his coat. The marriage contract. I found it in Richard's chamber. Emma opened it. Beside the crooked royal seal was a second page bearing Nathaniel's original terms. There was no execution order, no 30-day imprisonment, no demand that Jacob remain a hostage. Only an alliance and Emma's right to refuse. Richard changed it, Jacob said. Nathaniel never asked for my life. Emma looked toward the Wolf King. Nathaniel lay weak beside Abigail, but his gaze rested on her without command or expectation. The southern gate remained open. Jacob mounted the nearest horse. You saved me, he said. You do not owe this kingdom anything. No, Emma replied. But the people in those villages did not write the contract. She held the forged agreement over a stable lantern. Fire caught the red ink first. The false conditions curled into ash, followed by the crooked seal and the signature she had written beneath the gallows. Emma watched until nothing remained. Then she took Nathaniel's signet ring from the map pouch and pressed it into Owen's hand. Send riders to every village. Open the emergency stores. Move the grain through the river tunnels. Owen nodded. And Richard? Emma mounted the black horse beside Jacob. Nathaniel tried to rise. Emma, the gate is open. She turned her horse toward the burning castle. I know. For the first time since the gallows, every direction belonged to her. She could ride south and never see Frosthaven again. Instead, she drew the iron key from her cloak and closed her fingers around it. The first marriage was Richard's bargain, she said. What happens next will be my decision. Then Emma rode back through the gates as the blood moon reached its highest point. A monster does not hide from the truth, Emma said. A coward does. The doors of the great hall opened beneath the red light of the blood moon. Emma rode through them on horseback. Smoke curled beneath the vaulted ceiling. Nobles crowded the galleries while Richard Hale stood before the throne in ceremonial armor. Behind him, soldiers held Nathaniel on his knees. They had captured the Wolf King near the western stables. Silver chains crossed his chest. Blood soaked the bandage beneath his ribs, and a metal collar burned against his throat. Richard held a gray bottle above a silver cup. The final dose. You returned, Richard said. Emma dismounted. Jacob entered behind her carrying the original medicine ledger. Owen led the quartermaster and 2 wagon drivers into the hall. Abigail followed with the moonroot antidote hidden beneath her cloak. I was offered freedom, Emma said. Then I remembered freedom means nothing while you still control everyone left behind. Richard smiled. You have brought witnesses to watch their king become an animal. He poured the gray medicine into the cup. Nathaniel lifted his head. His amber eyes found Emma across the hall. Do not come closer. Richard forced the cup against his mouth. Nathaniel resisted, but 2 guards held his jaw. The silver liquid spilled between his lips. His body arched. The chains snapped tight as bones cracked beneath his skin. Black veins spread across his face. Claws tore through his hands, and a roar shook dust from the rafters. The nobles recoiled. There is your ruthless Wolf King, Richard shouted. Mad beneath the moon. Unfit to rule. Dangerous to every person in this kingdom. Emma walked forward. He is dangerous because you poisoned him. Richard pointed at the ledger in Jacob's hands. A book written by thieves proves nothing. Jacob opened it, then asked the wagon drivers. The first man stepped forward, trembling. Chancellor Hale ordered us to replace grain with stone. The second bowed his head. We carried silver powder to the royal physician. Every barrel bore Hale's private seal. Owen placed the duplicate wax stamp on the council table. One wolf fang was shorter than the other. The same flaw appeared on Emma's marriage contract, Jacob's false delivery records, and every order used to move the silver. Richard's face remained calm, but his hand closed around the hilt of his sword. Emma held up the original agreement Jacob had found. Nathaniel never demanded my brother's execution. You rewrote the contract to force me into this marriage. You framed Jacob because he saw you changing the king's medicine. Murmurs swept through the hall. Richard turned toward the council. She lies because she wants the throne. I do not want his throne. Emma looked at Nathaniel. He was no longer fully human. Dark fur covered his shoulders. His jaws had lengthened, and blood ran from beneath the silver collar. The chains holding him began to tear free from the stone. Richard smiled again. Then stand close to him. Nathaniel roared. The guards released the chains and fled. He charged. Emma heard Abigail scream her name. She did not move. Nathaniel crossed half the hall in one leap, claws striking sparks from the floor. Emma, run! Jacob shouted. She opened her hand. The moonroot antidote rested in her palm. Nathaniel stopped 3 steps away, his black eyes fixed on her. You caught the rope, Emma whispered. You gave me a door no king could open without permission. You listened when everyone else called me a purchased bride. He snarled and lowered his body to attack. Emma stepped closer. You are not the thing Richard created. Nathaniel's claws dug into the stone. You are Nathaniel Blackwood. The name reached him. His head jerked as though something inside the wolf had pulled against the poison. Emma lifted the antidote. You trusted me with your secret. Trust me with this. Nathaniel lunged. Emma pressed the moonroot mixture between his jaws. His momentum carried them both to the floor. For one terrible second, his claws hovered above her throat. Then his body convulsed. The darkness retreated from his eyes. "Nathaniel," she breathed. He collapsed beside her. Richard drew his sword and ran toward the western doors. Jacob blocked his path. "You hang me for seeing the truth." Richard raised the blade. Nathaniel's hand closed around his ankle. Though barely conscious, the Wolf King dragged him to the floor. Owen's soldiers surrounded the chancellor. Richard looked toward the council. "I protected this kingdom." Emma rose slowly. "No, you starved it. You poisoned its king. You chained every person who threatened your power." She placed the medicine ledger before the council. "Read every name. Count every missing sack of grain. Then decide who the monster is." Outside, the burning granaries began to collapse. But across the northern roads, wagons moved through secret river tunnels under Owen's orders. The villages would receive their food before dawn. Nathaniel pushed himself onto one knee. Before the entire court, he removed the silver collar from his bleeding throat and placed it at Emma's feet. "The secret I hid nearly destroyed this kingdom," he said. Emma shook her head. "The secret did not destroy anything." Her eyes moved to Richard. "The man who used your fear did." The blood moon shone through the high windows as the council ordered Richard Hale placed in chains. For the first time, Nathaniel's dangerous secret stood exposed before the whole kingdom. And no one saw a monster. They saw a king who had survived being made into one. "The first contract saved my brother's life," Emma said. "The second will decide how we live ours." 30 days after the blood moon, the great hall of Frosthaven filled once more. This time, no gallows waited outside. Richard Hale stood in chains before the council. The medicine ledger, forged seals, stolen grain records, and testimony from the wagon drivers had exposed every part of his conspiracy. He was stripped of rank and sentenced to the northern prison. Jacob Collins was declared innocent before the entire kingdom. Nathaniel restored the land taken from the Collins family and offered Jacob command of the Southern River Guard. Jacob accepted only after Emma reminded him that freedom included the right to choose responsibility. When the trial ended, Nathaniel remained before the throne. The silver burns on his wrists had begun to fade, but the marks would never disappear completely. He wore no ceremonial armor and carried no sword. Emma stood opposite him. Nathaniel placed their marriage contract on the council table. The crooked royal seal remained visible beside her signature. "This agreement was created through fear, deception, and the threat of death," he said. "It has no honor and no rightful power." He held the parchment over a candle. The red conditions burned first. Then Emma's name disappeared into flame. A murmur moved through the court. Nathaniel watched the contract turn to ash. "You are free," he told her. "Your brother is free. Your family lands belong to you. No debt binds you to Frosthaven or to me." Emma had imagined hearing those words from the moment she signed beneath the gallows. Now that they had come, they did not feel like an ending. Nathaniel placed an iron key, his royal signet, and a sealed land deed before her. "If you leave, Owen will escort you safely south." He did not ask her to stay. That mattered more than any declaration of love. Emma stepped toward the table and placed a new parchment beside the ashes. "I wrote another agreement." Nathaniel looked down. The document contained no price for a bride. It contained terms. The royal stores would be inspected by an independent council. No village ration could be reduced while the royal tables remained full. Every order involving grain, taxes, or medical supplies required 2 signatures. One belonged to the king. The other belonged to Emma Collins. She would hold her own land, control her own household, and keep the right to leave the marriage without punishment. Nathaniel read every line. "You are asking for half the authority of the crown." "No," Emma said. "I am asking you to admit the crown should never have held all of it." A faint smile touched his face. "And if I refuse? Then I ride south before sunset." Nathaniel picked up the quill. He signed without changing a word. The hall erupted in whispers. Emma signed beside him with the same name she had carried before the gallows. Emma Collins. Not purchased bride. Not royal property. Not the woman who saved a king because fate required it. Nathaniel offered her the iron key. "What does this open?" she asked. "Every storehouse, every council chamber, and every locked door in Frosthaven." Emma closed her fingers around it. "And the northern chamber?" His expression darkened. "That door will remain open. No more hidden chains. No more secret medicine." Emma touched the fading silver scar on his wrist. I will stay, she said, but not because I owe you. I know. And not because you are king. I know. She looked into the amber eyes of the man the kingdom had once called ruthless. I am staying because you learned to ask. Nathaniel held out his hand. He waited. Emma placed hers in it. Outside, wagons carried grain toward the northern villages. Jacob rode beside them beneath his own banner. The castle gates stood open, and no bells warned of execution. The first marriage had been written by a man who believed fear could control them. The second was written by Emma, and when she walked beside the Wolf King toward the throne, he did not place her beneath his crown. He moved one chair beside his own.